A game console is essentially just a sealed box computer, and like any computer, it's going to get hardware upgrades along the way. So for living room game consoles like the PS5, that means a mid-generation console refresh with the PlayStation 5 Pro. Now this new version makes some serious hardware improvements, especially when it comes to things like ray tracing and frame rate and AI upscaling. So I'm going to show you that, but I'm also going to show you how to upgrade the internal storage in any PS5, because even a couple of terabytes of storage may not be enough for your game library. So first, let's break down what's new in the PS5 Pro. The real key here is an upgraded GPU with more compute units, and the system has 2 gigs of extra RAM and even Wi-Fi 7. And because, as I said, this is basically a computer, and an AMD-powered one at that, the PS5 is getting its own upscaling tech called PSSR, or PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution. Now that's similar to AMD's FSR or NVIDIA's DLSS on PCs in that it takes a game's lower resolution output, then upscales it on the fly. So what does all that mean? It means that games are going to be able to render faster and add more high-end effects like ray tracing without killing the frame rate. For example, in a game like Spider-Man 2, you used to have to choose between a performance mode with better frame rates but fewer visual effects, and fidelity mode, which had all the eye candy but kept you at 30 frames per second. Now you've got 2 new options found only on the PS5 Pro. In Performance Pro mode, you're getting 60 frames per second while keeping all the ray trace features like reflections and water effects. And there's even now a Fidelity Pro mode that adds even more features like ray traced ambient occlusion and key light shadows, but at a slightly slower frame rate. So games like Horizon Forbidden West work the same way, adding better volumetric lighting and more realistic effects for things like fire and smoke, stuff you want to see on your big living room TV. The basic idea is that you no longer have to choose between a higher frame rate and better visuals. With the PS5 Pro, you can get both. Now the Pro comes with 2 terabytes of storage built in, but some games can climb over 100 gigabytes in size, so even that's going to fill up sooner than you think. In the original 1 terabyte PS5, you had a little bit under 700 gigs of actual usable storage space for games, and I know I filled that up very quickly. Fortunately, the PS5 Pro retains one of my favorite features from the OG PS5. It has an empty M.2 drive slot inside, which is easy to access and works with almost any M.2 SSD. You just need a drive and a heatsink, which probably comes with your drive, but if not, you can pick one up for about $10 or so. So we're gonna do the PS5 hard drive update. I got Jordan here with me because he has got the thing that I treasure most in life, an extra M.2 drive.
And this is an 8 terabyte drive. This is a Western Digital Black SN850X with a heatsink. I think this will fit in there.
And it's got the heatsink built in, so you don't have to get that separately. You don't have to get an 8 terabyte drive. That's probably pretty expensive, but you get 1 terabyte or 2.
Yeah, but think of how many games you could fit on here.
So the thing that always gives me a little bit of agita is taking the cover off the PS5. On the new PS5 Pro, it's actually a little bit easier. And I practiced a couple times to make sure I could do it. You just kind of pull up right here.
There you go.
And it pops off.
Look at
and
that.
then right there, right by the fan, this thing is where that empty drive slot is. So we take our screwdriver, we unscrew it. And then one of my favorite little notes here, little design notes, is that the screw actually has the little PlayStation controller symbols on it. The X and the triangle and the square and the circle. Anyway, I think that's kind of fun.
It's all those little details that make it just real nice. You know, Sony always takes that stuff into account.
A little bit of extra care. So here's the thing, we take this off, and there's a drive slot, and there's a screw in there.
Got it. And so you can fit any kind of M2 in here. So you've got the 30, 42, 60, 80 is what we're going to want to go for. This is already set to the super big size, so we'll just migrate this down. And there's
a little spacer and the screw.
A little spacer. And that's what the drive is going to rest on, so you just put the spacer down first. All right, so you insert it just like that. It's going to line right up to the spacer. You take your screw. So you take your screw with the spacer underneath, gonna hold it down. And that's it. I mean, that's easy.
And of course, we're gonna put this little cover back on, and we're gonna screw it in with our fancy PlayStation screw. This is actually a lot easier than on the original PS5, where you have to take the whole back cover off. Here we're just taking off a quadrant.
So once you match up all the parts, match up the little hooks, it'll just snap right in.
Every time I'm like panicky about this.
Right.
But it's always fine. Oh, I
you
heard a
go.
snap. That's good. That's a good snap, not a bad snap. That's not like the ankle snap when I try on rollerblades at my age. Okay, now we're going to plug this back in and set up the software. On booting, the console is going to ask you if you want to format your new drive. Naturally, the answer is yes. And once you do that, you can go into the system settings and ask the console to automatically install new games to your new drive or move current games there. So if you want to check out the PS5 Pro, the PS5 Slim, or the original PS5 in person, well then you should head down to your local microcenter. They've got consoles in stock and a huge collection of M.2 drives for expanding your PS5.